My first thought was good deal, good signing. I think it's going to be near the veteran minimum or, somewhere. I mean, you got to be realistic as well and notice the calendar. There's a reason. We talked about James Bradbury, and interestingly, they were college teammates back in the day at Sanford. So Sanford had a heck of a defensive backfield at one point. Both second round picks, both have developed into good NFL players. Bradbury, I still think is, at close to his apex, or certainly it's still in the conversation to being the same player. I'm not sure that's the same thing with Tarte, but
Let's get this week rolling here on Birds 365. You got your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald, to kick a full week off for you. Thank you for tuning in to Birds 365. And J-Mac, we get to start with some actual news. Eagles, once again, thank you very much for doing something on a Friday so that Mac don't get a chance to talk about it for 3 days. But that's okay because it's not changing. Jaquiski Tartt is not leaving the Philadelphia Eagles, or at least not anytime soon. Yes, the Eagles filled in one of the holes they had during this offseason, an extra veteran leadership guy in the defensive backfield, specifically at safety, picking off the former starting safety for the San Francisco 49ers. That's been a pretty good defense to be starting on the last 7 years. Jaquiski Tartt signs with the Birds on Friday. No details yet on the deal. When you first got news, what was your first thought, John McMullen?
My first thought was good deal, good signing. I think it's going to be near the veteran minimum or, somewhere. I mean, you got to be realistic as well and notice the calendar. There's a reason. We talk about James Bradbury, and interestingly, they were college teammates back in the day at Sanford. So Sanford had a heck of a defensive backfield at one point. Both second round picks, both have developed into good NFL players. Bradbury, I still think is, at close to his apex, or certainly it's still in the conversation to being the same player. I'm not sure that's the same thing with Tarte, but it's a significant need. Um, it's a good insurance policy. And I think if you look at it over the past couple of years, the Eagles have kind of done this. Sometimes it worked out with Corey Graham during the Super Bowl sort of run. Even Andrew Sendejo, and people rolled their eyes, but I think it was 9 games. It worked out. They got exactly what they wanted, but they were in the compensatory pick mode there. They didn't want to give up a compensatory pick. They wanted to get one back because they knew they weren't going to sign free agents. And that interestingly led them to Marcus Epps because they released Andrew Sendejo. Minnesota picked him back up. The Vikings had to waive Marcus Epps, and the Eagles picked him up. So it acted as a trade. The Eagles got a much younger player. Now you fast forward a couple years, they expect him to start, or we'll see with Tarte. What other guys? Jonathan Cyprian. People remember they picked him up in a trade. He was a pretty big name at the time. Didn't work out. Andrew Adams last year. They brought him in from Tampa. Probably should have kept him, I would say. And he went right back to Tampa, played a lot of football for them. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I like the insurance policy part of it, Jody. Look, I still think it doesn't change. They want Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps to start. They want the light to come on for Kayvon Wallace. But if it doesn't, you have a guy who started a lot of NFL football, and he'll be competent. And I think it's a nice insurance policy.
Right. And starting is one thing in the NFL. Starting for a very good defense is another. And the 49ers have been a damn good defense these last several years, including a trip to the Super Bowl where he was starting safety for them. Unfortunately for the Tarte fan club, who wanted to see him stay in San Francisco, and I don't know if we have one person who would fall into that category who happens to be watching right now, his days as a Niner were probably numbered when he dropped a very catchable interception in the championship game last year against the Rams. And don't kid yourself, these things happen, that a player makes one really bad play that they know is going to resonate going forward. And if you're not a above average player, certainly not a star player, if you've got some skills, but you've also got some downsides, the team will say, we need to go in a different direction here. And it's just one play, but it was a really big play. So it probably causes more pain in San Francisco than anywhere else on the planet. We don't have to worry about it. He didn't cost the Eagles a chance to go to the Super Bowl. He cost the 49ers a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So that's why I think a guy like, because my first question is, well, why wouldn't the 49ers want to keep him? Why didn't the 49ers go, well, because he dropped a very catchable interception in the NFC Championship game. I really do believe that. Do you think I'm overstating one play, or do you think there's something to it, J-Mac?
Well, I think on top of everything else, yeah, I mean, it can have an effect. A big play, a disastrous play can have an effect more on the psyche. I don't think as a whole you sort of look at it from a personnel standpoint, said, all right, the guy should have made a play, didn't make a play, we got to move on. But I do think they looked at him as a sort of descending players, now 30. We know what that number means in this league. They wanted to get better at the position. Um, Pro Football Focus, who we use all the time, graded him 72 of 92, so down towards the bottom of the safeties. It's interesting because, I don't watch a lot of San Francisco 49ers football because, when they get
kind
in
of
the
busy
playoffs,
with the Eagles.
yeah, exactly. When they got in the playoffs, I saw it, but I just looked at what he did and sort of the grades and the film work that people do, and I look at his size and say, all right, he's a box safety. He's good in run support. He's poor in coverage. Turns out, then I started texting some scouts around the league and said, no, he's not. He's not a box safety. In fact, and this is where it makes sense, Jody. He was in San Francisco, and I've been telling people all off season, the Eagles are trying to run Vic Fangio's defense more to nail it down a little bit. Brandon Staley's version of Big Fangio's defense, but that's where it all emanates from. And Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator in San Francisco before he went to Chicago. Now, he left the year before Tarte got there, but they kept running a scheme. They kept running a scheme in San Francisco, understandably so. And that's what he's been brought in to do. And he's, basically what the whole thought process behind the system is, show the same look pre-snap and then quickly spin out to your coverage. Usually it's in the case of Fangio, usually it's cover 2 on one side, cover 4 on the other side. So cover 6. And he can do that. He understands it. He understands the defense, I should say. He understands his responsibilities. Can he do it from a physical standpoint any longer? I don't know. That's the question. It wasn't all that successful. But then again, as you mentioned, Jody, look, everybody can't be a superstar. He was a starter. He was a long-term starter on a very good defense for a very long time. They've had a lot of success defensively, and there's something to say for that. There really is. He's more proven. I can't say he's probably in the same realm as Anthony Harris, who's a former Pro Bowl player who started on a lot of good defenses, a lot of top 5 defenses, but is descending as a player. He's not the same player. Probably in the same category as Anthony Harris. He knows how to play, but can he play at that level? I don't know.
Again, why is he no longer on San Francisco
Exactly.
then? I don't know. And you and I both watch what San Francisco 49er football we can see. Not always available. They're much more inclined to be staying on top of the Eagles than the 49ers, but they have had playoff runs where you did get to zero in on their guys. Can you give me any kind of scouting report on Talanoa Hufanga, who was their 5th-round draft pick last year, who as of now is penciled in as their starting strong safety this year? I got to tell you, I know nothing about this guy other than he was drafted last year, and it seems to be that's where they're going to go with their starting safety. I get it. Youth is got upside, which certainly Mr. Tartt doesn't have at this stage of his career, but being replaced by a guy who was a 5th-round pick, who couldn't get on the field, couldn't beat Tarte out last year, is going to beat Tarte out this year. Well, what was the difference? I again lean back on.
My
He
guess
dropped
is
the football in the game against the Rams that cost him a chance to go to the Super Bowl. That's why he's now in Philadelphia, not in San Francisco.
my guess is athleticism, ability to run. You know, it's probably a lot of why the Eagles have penciled in Marcus Epps here. You know, and that's part of personnel. That's arguably the most important part of personnel. Not just defaulting to what a guy has done, because if you do that, you know, the old adage in sports, not just football, is, you know, it's better to give up on a player a year early than a year late, because, you know, everybody is going to hit that wall. It's just the nature of the game. Um, we always give the caveat to Tom Brady, who seems to beat it, but for everybody else, they hit that wall. Certainly in positions where athleticism is needed, certainly that safety in the NFL. Um, my assumption is they like the kid, they like his upside, they like his ceiling, and they're making that, you know, sort of personnel evaluation, even if it's a little bit early. You know, I always go back to Jim Schwartz as well. Startup cost time. Got to get the startup cost over, man. If you know, if that's your guy, get him over with. All right, you know, get those startup costs, and hopefully by the second half of the season, you got a better player. If you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, then you know, the Sens don't usually stop and go the other way, Jody. They don't usually just stop and say, "Oh, he's going back up." So unfortunately, but for the Eagles, you know, I think the most important part of this, Jody, is the sentiment behind the signing, believe it or not, because I don't know if it's going to work. As I said, if you wanted me to put odds on this, I would say it's better than 50-50. He's going to be starting September 11th in Detroit. But I would tell you, there's also, you know, if you want real value and you can get prop bets on things like that, we always talk about value. There's probably a 20% chance he's not even on this team, because they're not going to give him significant money. We'll see what the contract is. I'd be shocked if it's anything more than the veterans minimum. This is a situation where you can have a true competition and say, all right, who deserves to be out there? And if he doesn't show anything, he could be Jonathan Cyprian and be out of here. But the sentiment of the signing indicates we're ready to compete and we need an insurance policy. And this is our most obvious need, safety on paper. Let's go out. Let's get a veteran with 64 starts who's played in a lot of playoff games. He's played in the Super Bowl. This is an indication to me the Eagles say we can compete, and I think that's a good thing.
Right, and we don't know how far that competition's going to go. Does it include a guy like Kayvon Wallace? If he comes in and just kills in preseason, I would not be surprised if the Eagles pencil him into the starting lineup. I do agree with you. I think it's an open competition for 4 or 5 guys in the safety position. No one is locked into a guaranteed starter spot, which for me is always a good thing. If you don't have a star player, well, why don't you get a couple of really good players? Let them compete. Let the best man win. Tartt, one drawback is that in 7 years in the league, he's been hurt almost every single year. So most years spending time on the injured list. But if you want to look at it through eagle-colored glasses, hey, if you're not asking him to start, if he's not a guaranteed going to play every snap kind of guy, less chance to get hurt. We know the Eagles buy into that philosophy because they don't really practice during the offseason to make sure nobody gets hurt. So therefore, you got Jaquiski Tartt, who should be healthy. for the Eagles this season. All right, we take our first timeout of the day. We've got our buddy Jeff Kerr to hop aboard. Today, John, I meant to mention this at the top of the show. For those of you who are streaming in today, you are part of a historic broadcast.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
Birds 365's 300th show. Johnny Mac and I've missed a couple shows. Johnny Mac misses shows when he's got to get over to go to camp, but he has been part of almost every single one of the 300 broadcasts. We've been doing this for over a year now, so we've reached our 300 show marker, and Jeff Kerr has probably been our number one contributor besides John and myself, so we thought it'd be good to get JK up here today. Jeff Kerr of CBS Sports and our top fill-in guy here on Birds 365 joins us next here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel.